when I stopped doing music in 1992 and KLF walk out, end, I didn't think I'd ever want to make music again. It just didn't interest me. It didn't want to. But a few years ago, I don't know, 8 years ago, I remember I was out in my Land Rover, Land Rover, oh yeah, it's owned by Germans. It's a German-owned company now. But anyway, in my Land Rover, and somebody had snapped the aerial from a radio, so there's no radio on. I didn't have any CDs on, didn't have anybody to talk to. So it's just me and the sound of the engine, the diesel engine. And then further I'm going through these country lanes, and I start listening, and within the sound of the engine, I can hear these voices. Now, I know the voices are inside my head, but I can hear them, and they're getting louder and louder. And after a while, it sounds like there's like 100 Vikings all going, ah. And also within this, I could hear these higher voices, like choir boy voices, singing along with the wind blowing through the wing mirror. And it sounded fantastic. And there was no tune there. There's no, melody or rhythm or words. Just, and over the coming months and years, it became a regular thing. It's not every time I was in the Land Rover, but this would happen. And there'd be times when I'd be working at home, getting up, trying to finish some writing and a bit of a block. Instead of putting the kettle on to make myself a pot of tea, I'd go out in the Land Rover, drive down some country lanes, just to listen to this choir in my head. Now, at some point, this choir took on the name The 17. There's no logic for it being called The 17. It just was. I just started, and I wasn't telling anybody else about this choir in my head. But maybe almost 5 years ago from now, I decided to see if I could make this a reality, this choir in my head. And I did with a bunch of blokes who were in bands, singers, in a place called Leicester, a small city in Britain called Leicester. And we did it in one night. And I recorded the sound of my Land Rover, took it in, we had a few drinks, and they seemed to understand, and we did it that night. And I thought it was fantastic what we'd done. Suddenly my relationship with music was really, really reinvigorated. And on the drive home that night, it was like 2 hours drive from Leicester to where I live, I imagined I was going to take this thing called the 17, and I assumed maybe it should have 17 singers in it, even though there was a lot more voices in my head. And I was so excited. I had these fantasies of us going on the road, like being a stadium choir, and whatever we'd recorded that night could be this hugely successful CD. But the next morning I woke up and thought, no, what a load of rubbish. Nobody in their right mind's going to buy a CD with a bunch of blokes going, ah. But I knew something great had happened the night before, and I wanted to experience that again. And stuff that, like I've been talking about before, our relationship with music been changing, with having the iPod and other things that were happening in our culture. I thought it would be good to maybe do this 17, try it out with 17 different people, and try it out and never make recordings, or never make permanent recordings. And then from there, I leapt into the idea that the 17 should be any 17 people. It should, to hear the 17, you have to be in the 17. So it completely steps out or outside of the whole thing, that whole thing that's built up through the 20th century, where it seems that the only relationship we have with music is as something that exists in the recorded medium. I mean, that's how we have grown up to judging a musician by the albums they have made, whether they're a classical composer or whether they're a punk band or whatever it is. It's the albums, and of course you go out and play live too. But it's through the album, and I wanted to completely do something that was totally outside of that. So I think that's where it evolved from.
Voilà, génial.